computer. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for watching this channel and our episode today with Roberto Melani. My name is Hiie, and this is our YouTube channel called Hiie Somatics, where we gather to talk about different topics related to the body and sensuality and living with awareness of our sensations. Okay. Thank you so much for coming and joining us today, Roberto.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's my pleasure to be here.
Yes. Can you tell us a little bit about your background with movement and what you do and the kinds of classes you teach?
Absolutely. So my background with movement started since I was born, basically. I have to say that I've always been involved in some kind of movement as a kid. I grew up in Italy, so this is when we didn't have a lot of devices, so in order to play and have fun, you just went outside and you just moved. So there's something that became always an integral part of my life. I also did a lot of sports. As a kid, I was involved in gymnastics, in swimming, which is movement, in the water, but also I did diving as well, martial arts. And then as I got older, I started working more in a gym setting. And that's where my career, as I became an adult, shifted in the walls of the gym. So what we consider today a gym. So it kind of went more inside, so to speak. I started my career basically as something for fun, because my background, actually, academically speaking, is in business. I actually have an MBA. I have an MBA in sports and fitness management from Northeastern University in Boston, Massachusetts. But at the same time, I just became intrigued and very involved in what we used to call aerobics in the 80s. Yes, I became an aerobic instructor.
Oh, cool.
Aerobic instructor when I actually, after taking several classes, I was always pushed by the instructor to be in the front because I really enjoy myself, and I guess I was pretty good at what I was doing. And she recommended I would become an instructor, and I followed her advice, and that just opened up a new world for me. All of a sudden, I was in front of people. I was helping people to, number one, be fit, stay fit, but have a good time. So there was always this connection with fun. There was always fun while you are moving. Whether you want to call it fitness or aerobics or anything, it was always movement connected with having fun. Yeah. And even from the early days, I have to say that I had some really great, rewarding conversation with, I guess we can call them members or clients, where a few times I'll never forget it. This is like at the very beginning when somebody said to me that they had come to my class being very depressed, to the point that they were thinking of ending their life, and I don't know if that's, I take that as the truth. And because my class was so uplifting and so full of joy, they decided not to. So again, this is something that stood in my mind, and it's always there. But that was has been the driving force for my career in the health and fitness industry. So, and that after, the initial, of becoming the initial sort of becoming certified in teaching classes, that basically in some ways derailed my career from the business side of the business into becoming more and more involved in the health and fitness and wellness. And that's basically I graduated in 1995, and since then I've just dedicated my life to learning more and more about the human body, human movement. I'm a certified personal trainer. I've taught classes ranging from aerobics or just regular high-low impact to Latin dance, or what we call today Zumba. This is before Zumba actually came to the forefront of the industry. I was already doing that in New York. And then also in the last, I would say probably 10 years, I became really involved in the working with older adults. And I kind of use the word active aging more, because to me it's a better way to describe the type of demographics that I work with, which normally when you talk about active aging is 55 and older. And nowadays you have a lot of people that are 50, 60, 70, and 80 that are almost athletes. And you have also people that are in their early 20s or 30s that are very sedentary, and that it's basically, it kind of almost contradicts the fact that they're so young and they don't move as much as they should. And then the last thing that I really started to focus on, and 10 years ago, was studying the human foot. So I have this really passion, almost like not an obsession, but more of a passion on how our feet impact our movement in terms of walking, just movement in general, balance, which is super important, especially as we get older.
Yes.
Yeah, that's basically my career in a nutshell. And I've been blessed to work for a lot of different companies in the United States. And I also have traveled pretty much every continent, training other coaches and instructors in delivering fitness movement classes.
Oh, thank you so much. This is such a rich history with movement, and
Yeah,
so many
thank
different
you.
kinds of movement and so many different populations.
Yeah.
Maybe you should write a book about your journey through movement. Have you considered?
Yeah, I think it's yeah. Again, I feel blessed. I feel really lucky that I had this, and I still do have this great opportunity to make a difference in someone's life through movement.
Yes, what you said about it almost sounded like you're saving people's lives through movement. I feel like movement saves our
Yeah.
life
Oh, it does.
in many different
There is
ways.
definitely a healing aspect to
Yeah.
movement, and it's not just physical; it's emotional. And because even the word emotion, you have e and motion, so there is that connection to that emotional movement. Trauma, right? As trauma
Yes.
gets ingrained in our body, in our
Yeah.
muscles, and you have tension,
Yeah.
and you have that release of that tension as you go through movement. Even with myself, I mean, that's
Yeah.
something that I have actually experienced on myself, even just lately, the last couple of years, last maybe year or so, I was having some issues with my neck. And of course, everything that you wanted to do, MRI, this and this and that. And yes, there are some, arthritis, degeneration of the joint, which is normal. I'm 58 years old, so it's just normal. Plus, with all the movement that I've done through the years, it's something that, and also I think also the way that we spent most of our day, which is sitting with the head forward, and all that kind of stuff. But and I actually, as the pain was causing me not to move anymore, because there was also a level of fear in that if I moved, it was going to get worse.
Yes.
But after going through that period, I started moving again. I started training again at my own pace, within my own world, basically. And I have to say that yes, the pain is not 100% gone, but most of it is gone. And I attribute that to, yes, Western medicine, but also movement.
Yes, that's a great segue actually to the main topic that I wanted to ask your advice about, or like to hear you think about this topic, which is the topic of emotions, actually. Emotions, and more specifically, the emotions of fear, and then maybe also the emotion of courage, but we'll get to that later. Let's talk a little bit about this fear of movement. So, for example, fear of movement in terms of what you just described as injury, maybe it will get worse, as you said, or fear of losing balance. How do you, in what context, and how do you see this kind of like different types of fear that enter our experiences with movement? And what do you
Sure.
do to help
Yeah,
people with this?
absolutely. So I guess, the one that comes to mind first initially is when I work with people, and especially if it's in a group setting, right? It's the fear of movement because it's the unknown. They've never done it before.
Yes.
What is, and then there is the fear of what others will think of me.
Uh,
How does that going to look like? I'm going to look stupid, or uh, like I don't know what I'm doing. And so that is I would say, the first barrier of that.
yeah.
So that is something, it's psychological. And of course, I can see where that could be something that happened perhaps in their previously. Someone maybe, wants to try to do a dance class or a movement class, and someone has said to them, why are you doing this? You're going to look stupid. Don't do it. No, 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 no. It's not for you. You're too old. You're too young. Whatever. Some kind of excuse, right? And
Yeah.
it's not about that. It's really about what is that experience going to do for me, and it's not about others, right? Now, definitely there is, when you practice movement in a group of people, you feel the energy of the group as well. And that's why I think it's really beneficial to do that in a group where you feel the support of the group, strength by numbers.
Yes.
Sorry. Um, and let me just turn the phone off. And so that's definitely one aspect of that. But the other one, as you correctly stated, is maybe a fear because of an injury. Western medicine, it's really, something you've had an injury, whether it's you've broken something, or you've fallen before, and it's always about putting somebody under uh, a glass, basically, you know, cover, where it's like, make sure don't do anything, stay quiet, be calm, don't do anything, and it's just kind of keeping, which that it does have value, but at the same time, even Western science now has come to understand that the the issue of mobility, which is basically movement, is something that should be integrated almost immediately after an injury has occurred. We have this acronym in fitness, you might have heard it, called RICE, RISE, which stands for rest, ice, compression, and elevation, right? So let's say that someone, they twist their ankle, right? Happens often. As they're walking down the street, they step off the curb, boom, right? So first thing, what we should say, okay, make sure, so you're gonna rest, so no movement at all, ice it, compress it, elevate it. Now, finally realizing that rest, it should be, I mean, it's just minimal to for the first maybe acute period of that injury, but then after that, there has to be movement. The movement, of course, has to be small and very gradual. So
Mhm.
movement becomes immediately part of the healing process as well, just also from the physiological, and aspect of that.
Mm. And what about your work with the foot and
Yeah. So yeah.
the
So yeah,
pull
exactly.
and
So the
balance?
feet, as we can easily understand and conceptualize. your feet are the foundation of your body. So think of a house. If the foundation of the house is not strong, right, the house will collapse. So as we get older, unfortunately, your feet lose a lot of the nerve endings. So basically, the studies have shown that from when you go from the peak of the nerves that are located in your feet, whether they are on the skin of the bottom of your feet or inside the joint itself, they have their peak at the age of 40 years old. At the age of 70, so 30 years later, we need to have twice the amount of stimulation for those nerves to help us detect changes in the environment, which means balance. Because think about when you walk down the street or you just walk even on the beach, just walking anywhere. It's rare that everything is flat. There's always things that change, right? So our nervous system detects those changes and makes adjustment like immediately. Like it's almost impossible to measure because it's happened so fast. Now, what happens when that doesn't work anymore? Fall, because then the system is not able to detect it, so the person falls. And unfortunately, studies have shown us that once a person falls, and I can speak from personal experience, I have fallen. This like happened 5 years ago, which was very traumatic because, again, being a fairly young person, I was shocked that I fell. But I actually felt that fear of movement. And so now, for a long time, I was really walking slower. That fear was really almost putting, my hands behind my back because I wasn't able to fully enjoy going out for a walk, and I was always concerned that I was going to fall again. And the second one is with my mom. My mother fell actually a couple of times, and it has been very her journey to recover, not just physically but also emotionally.
Yes.
The fear of falling has been quite extensive. It's better now, but it's still there. It's
And
better now.
how does one deal with this? So, for example, how did you get over this fear of movement,
Yeah,
and what do you notice
yeah.
about emotional
Well, it's
other?
with small steps. It's very easy for us today to always think about you want to go from 0 to 100 miles an hour. So you have to kind of create small objectives, small goals for yourself, so
Okay.
that you reach the goal once, and then okay, now the next one, and then at the end, slowly, with we call it progressive. With progression, you will regain that confidence, because it really goes to confidence,
Yes.
and because you will, after the way when you train your body is you train your muscles. So confidence as well, I think of it as a muscle as well,
Uh-huh.
and the two go together. So you train, even when the way you train your brain is a muscle. You want to just use the same concept. And repetition builds confidence. That's something that I've learned through the years in the world of fitness. It's constant repetition, and then slowly adding more progressions, making things a little bit more challenging. And even if it's just 1%, 0.5%, it's a success. And celebrating those successes, that's the other thing as well. When I work with clients, when I teach my classes and I see their progress, even if it's very, very small, even if someone is able to stay on a single leg balance, they started with 10 seconds and they're doing 12 seconds, 15 seconds, that 2 or extra 5 seconds, it's a huge success. And I always want to celebrate that with them and help them celebrate it as well, for them to really enjoy and embrace it.
Yes, and to see it and to notice it. I love the idea of repetitions. The confidence grows through repetitions. It's a
Yeah,
beautiful way of seeing repetitions, because so many people think repetitions are boring and
yeah,
mind goes
yeah.
wandering and but repetitions is really powerful for creating confidence.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And I can see where that can become a little boring. But then when you work also with a professional, and if that person understands the concept and understands how that specific, whether it's a client or a group of people, then you're able to a certain extent, take that boredom away and
Yes.
add different elements that can make an exercise that we do every single week, every single time, feel new, feel exciting,
Exactly.
more interesting. And then the thing, especially with balance, is that people see results very quickly. It's something that it happens very quickly for anyone, whether they are, you know, young adults, regular adults, or even older adults. It's quick. It's pretty quick. And that's something that in any type of training that I do, whether I'm training somebody to for more of a bodybuilding aspect, or for whatever type of goals they're looking for, I always include balance. Always, always.
Oh,
That's kind of, it's a non-negotiable for me.
yes, we all need it so much. The Let me ask you this: in your work with the private clients or even in group settings, do people open up about their fears about movement? Is it something that you discuss with your clients openly? Like they come to you and they say, "Well, Roberto, I'm afraid to do this movement," or it's more like
Yes,
you see,
yes.
and but it's not really, you don't talk about it openly.
Yeah, so in yes, it has occurred, several times. For instance, I teach a class, excuse me, a virtual class actually, that I've been teaching for almost 3 years. And I work with a group of older adults, ranging from, I would say, mid 50s to 70s and 80s. And uh, I think because the group has evolved into this really supportive community of people, then they're not afraid to ask questions and even express their concern, their fear about something. In other situations, I always try to, in some ways, isolate, just make sure that that person feels safe and comfortable to come and talk to me. And sometimes it's done privately, because we don't want, just, you know, they would feel maybe self-conscious if they did that in front of a group. So again, it depends on the situation, but um, it has happened, and it's something that um, I think the first step with me is always um, listening to them. Let the client or the member just express their fear, and then from there, kind of establishing a base, like a kind of like a common denominator between me and them, and then explain to them how we together we can actually create, whether it's a program or a sequence of steps that will help them regain that confidence, regain that courage, that strength to do a specific movement or try something new again.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times it's about trying something. Oh, I've done it before. I didn't like it because I wasn't good at it.
Yes.
I felt I was unsuccessful, or I was only able to do it for 5 seconds, and I don't want to do this anymore. And so sometimes what has helped me a lot is explaining the why behind the what. Why are we doing this? And often I think trainers don't give enough credit to their clients in terms of explaining. And of course, I'm not going to explain something very technical, to go into the nerve endings and the bones like this, but I'm going to do my best to explain them maybe in terms that they can understand exactly why are we doing this and what the benefits are. Because I think when somebody can make that connection in their mind, then it's a win-win situation for everybody.
I think that is so important and so relevant. Now, I don't know precisely what my question is going to be about this, but I just want to tell you this little story about myself.
Sure.
When I was younger and I was taking sports classes, and our sports classes in Estonia back in the day, there was nothing really holistic or mind-body about the movement experience. It was kind of like militaristic, do this, and then
Yeah.
competition, competitive, and not that much explanation. And I remember we were doing some gymnastics exercises, such as, what is this thing called? You run, you run, you run, then you put your hands on the thing. In Estonian, it's called a horse. You put the hands on the thing, and then your legs go out to the side, and then you jump over.
You go over, it's the horse. I mean, I remember doing that as well. I
Yeah, and I remember I had like one of my movement traumas comes from that experience because nobody really explained to me or showed me how to do it. I think the teacher just took it for granted that we know how to do it. And so I would just run to the thing and then just kind of like stand there because
and stop and freeze, right? No, absolutely.
And I feel like this topic of how to explain movement to people and how to like show them, just like break movement down more, is so important. Because to this day, for example, I comprehend certain movements like much more slowly than other people. That's why I have trouble sometimes with like fast choreographies and things like this. And I think like sometimes my fear of movement comes from these past experiences as a kid where I wasn't able to keep up. I didn't understand.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
No,
I
absolutely.
feel like,
And when we're kids also, I think, other kids, can be cruel,
yes, and they're all
with
very agile also, and they do things better. And
peer pressure, it's very powerful. I remember this. I experienced that when I was a kid, in many, many different ways. I remember when I was doing gymnastics that this was more, because we were running around outside and we had to wear, this little shoes that looked like ballerina shoes. And
yes,
my friends were like outside pointing, making fun, and like, oh, look, the little girl ballerina. So inside I was feeling shame.
yes, exactly.
And that's one reason why I stopped. Actually, I stopped doing gymnastics because I wanted to belong with the rest.
Right.
And when I look back, I'm like, because gymnastics is such a great sport.
Yes.
It really, it's all body weight, and it just uses the body in so many different ways. And it's a great discipline.
Yeah.
Sports, when it's done correctly, I think for children, for everybody, for children especially as they go through the maturing process, it really teaches about discipline.
Yes, exactly. I guess
You
the
know,
reason why I wanted to bring this topic up is that I feel like in academic classrooms, this topic of neurodivergence or like
yeah.
people having different kinds of learning style and different ways, like the brain is different, is
Mhm.
becoming more popular. And I feel like in movement classrooms, something like this could also have more presence, like understanding how
So
people
yeah,
apprehend movement differently also.
absolutely. So actually, it is present in some ways, and
Yes.
I can be, if I may do that, may do so. I can explain to you what the training that I went through, and then when
Yes.
I train other trainers and coaches and instructors, this is something that I really focus on, which is cueing, basically coaching. How do you teach a
Yes.
movement, right? When you have all this complicated choreography. I remember when I lived in New York, and I thought of myself as a pretty good choreographer. I used to go take. Always wanted to go and take more advanced classes, and often I would just end up at the back of the room with the back against my wall watching, and I was like, they're going too fast. I can't follow.
Yeah.
How am I going to be able to do that? So I felt that. Okay. So in fitness, basically, obviously there's different way of learning. Adults learn there's different. There is a visual learner, there is a kinesthetic learner, there is auditory learner. Okay. So there's those three main styles. But when it comes to coaching and cueing, you can do also verbal cues, right? Which is describing verbally. There is also visual cueing, right? Kinesthetic cueing as well, with touch, which is also very important because
Yes.
we are so disconnected as people in general. Then when sometimes if I ask a client, okay, I need you to contract, engage your tricep. First of all, like, where is it? I don't even know where. Oh, it's right here. Okay, so let me go ahead and touch it, and then
Yeah.
they can feel the connection. Oh, okay, now, yes, now I feel it. So it's almost like reconnecting the wire, rewiring the nervous system. And especially because nowadays we are so disconnected. Everything is through our little phones right here,
Mhm.
or the computer, and we're just, again, not so much focused on our body. Um, but then there's also within the coaching viewing, because we also call it coaching, because you're coaching somebody, is the difference between an internal cues and an external cue. Whereas an internal cue, it's something that relates to the body. So, for instance, I need you to flex your, to flex your chest as you do a push-up, right? So, they might not understand what the word flex means. It's not very intuitive. But if
Yes.
somebody's doing let's say a push-up or something, and I say, okay, I want you to imagine that you're pushing the floor away from you, or push something away from you. They can relate to that better than flex your chest.
Mhm.
So things like that, basically.
Ah.
Or for instance, when somebody's trying to balance, and say, okay, I want you to spread your toes if you're doing this barefoot or even inside the shoes, and really imagine that you have roots coming out of your feet and
Right.
they're connecting to the earth. Now feel that stability. Even though the ground might be shaking, you're still connected, you're stable, and on like that. So there's, again, different ways that you can help assist the client, the member, the group, in understanding how to
Okay.
execute a movement or a certain position. I do think that yoga, for instance, the discipline of yoga does an incredible job. They take it to the next level because they also focus on the emotional aspect of fitness, of movement. We don't do that as much in traditional fitness classes, not
Yeah.
enough.
I think sometimes it depends on the teacher also. Like one reason I stopped actually taking yoga classes in New York was the fact that I felt like in that class it was just a series of movements actually. There
Yeah.
was no emotional connection. So I think it depends also on how the teacher
Oh,
teaches.
absolutely. I mean, the teacher, the instructor, it makes or breaks the class. Absolutely, 100%. So,
Roberto, what can you tell us about courage and movement? Like, can I bring courage to, can I use movement to build courage? And how do I do it? You mentioned yoga. So, for example, in yoga, certain poses are being done, I think, also for the purposes of like building courage and then getting
mhm,
and fears, like a headstand or something like this. But
yeah.
now, what should I do? Should I start doing headstands, or how do I movement to build
So
courage?
I can actually relate that to personal experience. One of my many jobs that I do, I work for a digital platform based in Atlanta, Georgia, where we deliver small group training classes for older adults, basically for active age of 55 and older. And with my group, I can tell you my experience. I've had a couple, and I can think of one specific person, Carol, that after attending now for close to 3 years now, my classes and working, and really focusing a lot on technique, form, alignment, and again, including always encouraging, uh, offering positive reinforcement, celebrating little successes. Okay, you're able to balance on your leg now for 15 seconds, then next week 30 seconds, and on like that. For instance, I know that she actually said the word courage when she said, "I finally got the courage to go to Chile and do a hike."
Yes.
And really, and really sort of breaking down the wall of not having the courage to do something because
Yes.
they don't, someone doesn't think that they have the stamina, the endurance, the energy to do something. And I think that going back to the idea of doing things gradually, small step, another phrase that I use is it's not about perfection, it's about progression. It's always about progression, small successes, small step, one step at a time, okay, one step in front of the other, which then I think gets somebody to feeling more courageous, more confident. I think the two words can also go together. When somebody has the courage to do something, they feel like they have the confidence to do it. Whether or not they're going to be successful or not, it doesn't matter. I think it's just the feeling of trying it and having the courage to try it. It's a success in itself. Because I always tell somebody, hey, it's like when you're making a recipe for the first time.
Yes.
You have all the ingredients. Sometimes it's not going to come out the way that you want it, but hey, you're going to try it again, try it again. And it's really about that. It's just having, and there are certain, I think any kind of movement does that. Movement though should, again, it's really about not creating this boxes where people have to fit in specific boxes. Let's take the example of dance, right? When I used to teach dance class a lot, I always applauded. I always encouraged people to be free. I always gave them, okay, for the next 20 seconds, it's freestyle. And I would just watch them just go and express themselves. And that was the part that I think people really loved the most, because every time they did that, I could see that spark in their eyes. I could see that the whole body their aura just all of a sudden just becoming bigger and bigger and expanding, and just really wanting more and more of that. And then often even verbally say, oh my God, I just felt so good today. I feel like I can actually able to go dancing, and almost saying I got the courage to go out and dance, I don't know, salsa in a dance club in New York or whatever, where before they didn't have the courage to do it.
Exactly. And that's something I see in my classes all the time when I teach movement, is that to dance freely, it takes a lot of courage. It's an act of bravery, especially for some people who are more shy or timid or less confident. And so,
No, absolutely. Yeah, and especially with men, I think um, the way that women it just are more connected. There's more of a emotional connection, whereas men, it's just everything is very, I don't know, primal in some ways, mechanical. It has to be almost related always to brute force to a certain extent, whereas movement can be soft, delicate, still beautiful, and still powerful, still strong. It's almost like that powerful and graceful together. It's kind of like this marriage between the two words.
yes. On that note, I was one of my earlier articles was about men and movement, and I conducted some interviews with men about why there are so few men in movement classes, like mind body type dance classes. And guess what they said? They said that as men, they are afraid to go to these classes. There's a fear of emotions. Like, what if I go to this dance class and I have feelings come out of me? I thought that was such an interesting statement.
It is very interesting.
And men,
Yes.
like it was not just one man, like men, like several men told me that it's this, that they're
Yeah.
afraid of their own
Yeah.
emotions and what dance can actually do to them, that it might put them in touch with a certain sense of themselves that they don't want to look at necessarily.
Yeah. I definitely think that dance has this ability as well as yoga. Obviously, it depends on the instructor, like you said a few minutes ago. I think the instructor is often the catalyst to just allow that process to happen.
Yeah.
Um, I had some wonderful mentors in my life. One of them is a dear friend of mine who lives in New York, who I'll never forget it. When I first met him, I was a fairly shy and, let's say, quote unquote, conservative in the way that I moved and expressed myself
Really.
dancing. And then once I met, his name is Calvin, um, great instructor, great friend, great person. Um, to see somebody, I think when people see someone that has this freedom of being who they are, has
Yes.
the courage to be who they are in front of others in a way that is non-threatening, that is it's not hurting anyone, then something happens in their brain where there's like, well, if he can do it, maybe I can as well.
Yes. That is a
You know,
beautiful thought, like we give courage to people with our words, like you mentioned earlier, how you explain, and then with our presence, like for
yeah,
example, you as a private coach, like your presence in the lives of your clients, you give them a lot of courage and support. And then you also give people courage with your movement, like just with your movements, with our movements, we can make other people bolder and braver.
no, absolutely. And I think a lot of time when you're able to describe a movement that sometimes can be, has a name, like whether it's, in dance, or yoga, it has a specific name, and then you can see sometimes that that person or the group just cannot relate to that the way that you describe it. Then it's up to the facilitator, to us, to come up with another way to describe the movement. And I think that's the key. When you're able to go outside of those constraints, whether it's you're describing a movement like you're doing something, or you are uh, describing in a way that is could be more, let's say, metaphysical or just more pragmatic. It depends. Everybody learns in different ways. So I think that's where uh, it becomes again a win-win situation for everybody.
Yes. Thank you so much, Roberto, for this interview. Is there something that you want to add that I didn't ask you about? Something
Um,
to leave the listeners with?
no, I mean, for me, it's I just would like to, well, thank you first of all for allowing me to share my experience and my knowledge and my thoughts on this topic. Um, just take a risk. This is it's a taking a risk about feeling, um, even though at times might be scary. The other side, the sun is shining, is going to shine, because it really something that will enrich the person physically. So physically notice difference, whether it is, becoming more flexible, being more stable, stronger, faster. But then there is the emotional gain that goes above and beyond that,
Yes.
that will carry through life in general.
Yes, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you or come to your class at Vitality
Um,
Society, for example, which is
yeah, so I'm actually in the process of creating my own website.
mm-hmm.
So, but for now, if anyone has any questions, I can just give you my email address, which is my first name and last name. So it's robertomelani@gmail.com. And I'll be more than happy to answer any questions or give advice or just have a conversation with anyone.
Yes, because I feel like maybe a lot of people would need to contact you, especially about balance and
Absolutely. That's
you
definitely
can
one
coach
of my
people.
specialties and something that I'm very passionate and dedicated to helping anyone with balance. Absolutely.
Maybe we should do another special episode on the foot and
Yeah,
balance.
I would
That would
love
be a
that.
great
I
topic.
would love to. I would love to.
That's a philosophical theme also, balance and
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
because that's you can relate that to balance. Again, your feet. There's so much that comes. Everything's connected to the brain, and there is the concept of interoception, exteroception. Which is your gut feeling, and then what your body feels. How do you connect the two? So
And foundation.
fascinating, fascinating.
Yes, we need to do an episode on balance and foundations.
Okay,
To
we
be
will.
continued, in other words. Thank you so
Awesome.
much. And
You're
thank
very
you to
welcome.
the listeners too.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.